Okay, good evening, everybody. It is about 8:33 on the 9th day of June, and this is the second in a series on Israel and Middle East in film. I suspect most of the films are going to have to do with Jewish themes, and they may or may not have to do with Israeli or Middle Eastern themes. The one for this evening, Unorthodox, really has very little to do with Israel other than I think the main star and one of the other actors are Israeli, and one or two of the characters are Israeli. I was asked earlier how this came about, and I'll tell a little bit of the story. Mimi and Frank were in my course during the year called Israel and Middle East, or Middle East and Israel in Film. We had a grand old time. I had a lot of fun. We saw 14 full-length films. We enjoyed it. And at the last session, my students basically said, you ought to do this over the summer. A lot of us are not doing very much because everything is closed. And so I said I would think about it. And after thinking about it and getting my grades in and whatnot, I said I'll do it during June and July as much as possible. So we began last week. We had, I think, a very interesting discussion about The Spy. Today, the discussion is about Unorthodox. I am less prepared today than I was last time, but this is a very popular film, and I suspect that many of you who've seen the film will have an awful lot to say about it. So I'm not too worried about my being less prepared than I had expected at this point. I do want to spend a moment or two thanking various people. First of all, I thank my class, and to a certain extent, this is an extension of it. Middle East and Israel in Film, Religious Studies 3090 at the University of Wyoming. I'd also like to thank Colorado Hebrew Chorale, whose director, my wife, Carol Kozak Ward, has muted herself and is there someplace on your screen. But the Hebrew Chorale has helped publicize the program this evening. I'd also like to thank not only Carol, but the director of the Kol Nashim, who also helped publicize this to many of the people who are actually on this screen tonight. Kavod is not really a sponsor, but Kavod on the Road is also the way that some of the people have learned about this program, and I'm grateful to them for supporting it as well. When I say supporting, this is a volunteer on my part. They only supported it by putting in their publicity. Okay, I told you how this came about, and I told you a little bit about the support that I've gotten for publicity. I want to ask everybody who did not get a direct email from me to put their email on the chat so I can copy it and have the email. Most of you, I'm looking at, I think I have emails from everybody at this point. And Mimi, I'm going to ask you to take a screenshot from time to time where you have everybody's picture and you have a list of the participants, since I didn't do that. Oh, I have one more thing to mention. Very important. I need to have, first of all, I will read my friend Muhtarama Dr. Dilnoza. Hi, Dr.
Thank you so much. Hi, good evening. Hello, Mi, how are you doing?
I also publicized this on a very important endeavor of the University of Wyoming. Dilnoza, give me the 1 second speech about the World Language and Culture program.
World Language and Culture program helps to promote world languages and cultures to bring the peace in the world.
And as of this summer has incorporated so that it not only has support from the University of Wyoming, but it also is a 501c3. We'll see grants and so on and so forth. Dilnoza is a recent doctoral. You know, all of you, graduation is good. Let's all congratulate Dilnoza for graduating.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm curious about one thing. What's your background today?
My background, that's the sign-up sheet that I put out for this program.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I didn't see it, I don't think.
I can change the background if you want.
No, I was just curious. It's fine, whatever you want to use.
Right, well, it should look like some of you saw a sign-up sheet, a jot form, which had the material, and I put it out there. Okay, who wants to get us started off? Anybody have any comments they want to make to open about the film, the series, Unorthodox?
I will.
Donna, please.
Yes, I talked to my shul, who is Chabad, and asked them about the movie, and they said it was a little hefty, was heavy on the Hasidic side and not theirs, so they were not very happy with that. And then on my comment is that the girl who had to go through the musicianship, I understand where she's coming from, because I came through that myself. And I understood about everything she said about being a musician and wanting to be a part of it.
Okay. Rebecca, I see you laughing. Did you see the film, and what did you think about the musicianship and the Berlin Conservatory students?
Okay, well, I have a lot to say about the portrayal of the musical aspect of this film. I would say, as a blanket statement, that it is completely unrealistic to my own experience of auditioning and attending a conservatory. Firstly, so in the section that she applies for the school application, many conservatories do have, I suppose, funding for extraordinary circumstances. However, it would never happen like that. You would never have, on such a short notice, an interview where you could just go in and fill out a one-page application. School applications for conservatories, you need many requirements: letters of recommendation, repertoire lists, list of festivals that you have attended in recent years. You need transcripts, even like statements of intents. Like you wouldn't hand like a 2-page paper and then get an audition in the next few weeks. These things take 4 months minimum, I would say, in my own experience. And I've auditioned at or done schools in in Europe, in Canada, and in America, the States. So that's my own experience. And then I would say also in like the bits that they showed rehearsals of the Berlin, I think this too, they wouldn't necessarily have a student just be able to sit in like that. And the way that the rehearsal was conducted, it wasn't like, I don't know if everyone remembers, but there's a conductor, right? And all the students are there, quasi playing. I don't know, they didn't seem very serious. But then there's the person that brings in Etsy to watch, and he interrupts the rehearsal several times, but he's not the conductor. This would never happen. The maestro rules the rehearsal in every musical aspect. So I was a bit confused about this as well. This seemed unrealistic to me, or just not even unrealistic, just something that would never occur. And then I would say lastly, the audition. So firstly, she says that she's...
Oh, you get back to me, it's okay.
She says that she's going to do piano, right?
No, I'm on mute.
I
don't have my picture.
And then she changes it to voice last minute. She would give up her audition. But if she actually scheduled an audition, she would forfeit it by changing it so last minute. She wouldn't be able to just get an accompanist like that either, because the accompanist has to be put on the form months in advance. They need to know who you're actually playing with. And usually the accompanist is affiliated with the school as well. They have to be a designated pianist. And you would never be able to go in and play 2 small pieces for an audition. I've done auditions, and one of them asked for 2 hours of music by memory. That was the most, and the minimum requirement was 1.5 hours of music by memory. Concerto, Bach, sonatas, etude, like you would never go in and do 1 song ever, or 2 songs ever. unless it was maybe for a performance certificate at the end of doing an undergraduate, a master's degree, like a 1-year program. Maybe you could go in and do 2 pieces, but even then it would be a full sonata and maybe 2 movements of a concerto. It would be like half an hour worth of music minimum at best.
Well, my wife, Carol, who likes to chat, but I'm going to read it. She completely agrees with Rebecca. Nothing was realistic about the Berlin.
No, except for like maybe sleeping in a practice room. Well, she didn't sleep in the practice room. She slept in the janitor's closet or something. Like I've slept in practice rooms before, you know, like something like that I think is kind of fun to put in there. But no, like the actual, I would say the real, like the musical stuff was totally unrealistic.
I'm going to add 2 things. Carol wrote, music students can be very friendly. So
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and they have dinner parties and they play for each other and all of this. Like this was, you know, I would say spot on from my own experience.
Jody is going to say something.
Because, you know, I accept your version of what really happens in the conservatories, but it struck me that these students were so ridiculously accepting of this nerdy girl who just shows up. I mean, I thought, come on, that's not going to happen. Do you think that would happen?
If they had nothing better to do, maybe, you know, but it's like they have the dinner party, right? So Esty comes over and then they say, oh, well, we all play in for each other, you know, and that happens. Like, you know, we do sight reading, little parties with dinner party. Like I've done that with my friends many times. So then they go, play for us, right? So then Esty finally plucks up the courage and she goes to the piano, and like within seconds they all go, well, she doesn't have a hope, right? And then like the one girl, she actually is, you know, brutally upfront and honest with Esty, and they're all going, oh, be nice to her, but like honestly, you know, none of them would be saying that. None of them would be saying, oh, give the girl a break, because she doesn't stand a chance in getting into school, right? So I think this was a bit misportrayed in a way.
Add one more thing. I think that they real life students would have played on screen more than was portrayed on the screen.
Yes.
I really haven't seen anybody practicing, and that's
they wouldn't be going off to the beach that one day.
well, they might have been, and that might be the only interesting thing. But
Probably the only time.
Yeah, no, but then they go out to the discotheque, right?
yeah, but then they would go back and they would, you know, be plugging away at whatever they needed to practice.
Yeah.
Okay, we covered suspension of disbelief. Does anybody have anything else you want to start us off on other than the non-realistic musical scenes?
So they had to have the beach scene in order for her to take her wig off and float in the water. That's one thing. The other thing is, many of you probably saw the interview with her in which she said the very first scene they shot was the one in which they shaved her head. And it was traumatic on many levels.
Okay.
To me, actually, the bridal.
Claudia, you muted yourself.
Oh, the bridal scene was just incredible. I mean, that whole thing where she was shaved and then they put the thing on her and.
Okay. Sherry, and then Jody.
I was a little confused when I watched it the first time, because I didn't realize they were doing flashbacks back and forth. That was very unclear in the beginning until I got into it, and then I went, oh, they're flashing back to what she's got going in her head about why she's leaving. I was totally confused, having grown up in not that world, but in the Orthodox world, at how they demonstrated how closed that community was and how narrow-minded they were about everything that she did, and yet they accepted her for the shidduch, for the matchmaking.
Yeah.
They put her down for everything that she did. She didn't have the proper parentage. She didn't have the proper yichus. She didn't have the proper this. She didn't have the proper that. But they accepted her for this marriage, and there was like no differentiation. Once she was in it, it became totally the mama lashon. It was whatever the mama said. The mama's language was what was go, and it didn't matter.
His mama.
Yeah, because her mama wasn't in the picture.
Mm-mm.
The Ruby that was in the picture. So that I found a little overtly confusing.
Jody.
So I think there, can you hear me?
Yes.
There are different ways to go on this, I think. We could sit and say, how realistic is it? I mean, it's supposed to be Satmar Hasidim. How much does it really fit Satmar? That's one way. Or how realistic is it in terms of portrayal of, you know, conservator, whatever, how realistic? The other way to go is, what are the filmmakers trying to do with this story? Whether or not it's realistic or not, what's the point they make? You know, you say, oh, that she had to have a beach scene so she could take off her wig. Well, she could have taken off her wig in any other way. You know, it's like, so let's look at it as a way, what are they trying to prove by this? And then 3 is, well, I read the book, and it's so different from the book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things I'm doing now is looking at the Orthodox world. So I've gone to all these paper presentations on people who leave Orthodoxy. And I guess that's part of the second question, which is that it's now a genre. It's certainly a written genre. And now here's a film genre. And there are film genres too, but it's like, how do these genres, they may not reflect reality and they may be something filmic, but what do they say about what non-religious people want to see? You know what I mean? Like, they want to see conservatories this way, or they want to see how horrible Orthodoxy is, especially that kind of. So in a way, they're like interrelated, but they're 3 different ways to sort of analyze this film, and each one would be a lot of fun. And I think we can cross over a lot, but I think we have to sort out what the questions are that we're asking.
Well, certainly, Frank and Mimi know from my class, I always like to say that you can't always tell what happened in reality.
Here it is. One.
Figure out what the filmmaker is.
You locked it. It's right. Put the light on. It's right in the middle, I think.
And even in a documentary, you have to remember that the documentary's filmmaker's voice is stronger than the reality that's there. In terms of the leading Orthodoxy motif, Jody's probably been to more of the papers more recently than I have. I've read Lynn Davidman's book, both, you know, the one where she talked about people joining and people leaving religion. I've seen a number of papers. And I've read the news. Folks who have problems with Satmar or problems with some of the other communities, and some of them do fairly well. The interviews with the author of this book seem to suggest that she's been a success story. She went to Sarah Lawrence while she was still in Satmar. Her husband and she and her husband are sharing, Deborah Feldman and her husband are sharing custody of their kid. She hasn't jumped off a building yet. You know, there's a lot of very real, very, very unhappy stuff with people who leave the Hasidic movement. The reporter said she hasn't spoken with her own family, whatever that is, and possibly not with the mother of her husband in quite some time. But that's the reporting that I saw. In many ways, this is a success story. She sold 2 books. She has a role in a movie. You know, she's doing real well. There are lots of people who, you know, every couple of months you hear about folks who jump off buildings. Vicki, down the road from you on the other side of Union Turnpike, when I was last in Brooklyn, I was at a weekend that was by a modern Orthodox congregation that was trying to welcome ex-Hasidim. Saying we're going to find a very welcoming home that's Orthodox and will not be challenging in certain ways. And these are very real issues. By the way, Chabad and Satmar don't always get along. If the Chabad people told you that it was very heavily Satmar, you can, figure that might not have been a positive for them.
No. And also the rules that she talked about, said she was leaving God because God had too many rules. That can be a possibility. And then the second thing is when she said that they all thought if you sang, you did things to guys, and that's a true item. So there's in Chabad, they have a lot of rules, and we have a lot of things we need to follow, and this musicianship is one that we cannot do it, not girls can. There's a lot of things girls cannot do. But from what my Chabad said, it said it was not nearly this control that they had in the family. But I do agree with one of the things where we always say this too in my synagogue, and don't tell anybody said this, but we used to say this to each other, that the men always got away with everything and the girls didn't. We got blamed for stuff. We were not supposed to read the Torah. We're not supposed to sing. We're not supposed to do this and that. And so we always felt that the guys were sort of pampered. So that's all I have to say.
Indulged.
I'd like to kind of jump into, I mean, I tend to get totalized as a Chabadnik, but the truth is, like in Brooklyn, half the time we'd go to Chabad, family for lunch when we got invited. And the other half of the time we'd go to a Satmar house. I kind of had like the cultural capital. Like, number one thing, I really had to use suspension of, disbelief, because I didn't feel like I was like looking at a legitimate Satmar house. For one, they are the most likely to break out in song if it's, as long as it's on the weekday. So I think they would have actually been doing like, a happy dance or something, but they seem to have a really high incidence of people that can just play, like violin, piano and such, and it's like multiple instruments, but it just, like, the wedding didn't seem authentic at all. And a lot of the other, I know some people were really impressed by the costumes. I wasn't. I was aware, like, these are not legit, the Streimels, they're not. I don't know. I really, and I don't know if somebody else had, has had some interaction with the Satmars, but it didn't seem super authentic to me.
And I saw the making of it, and they were saying that it was really expensive to get the real hat, so they did all this like fake fur stuff, because the real hats are like, made from actual mink. And this was just, something they kind of threw together for the movie, so because they had to make such a tremendous amount of them.
Frank, let me ask you if you can relate to Jody's question. Suspension of disbelief aside, what do you think is informing the message of the directors or of the film with the suspension of belief? Let's leave aside the question of whether it's authentic or even believable, because a lot is not really believable, both on the Berlin Conservatory side and on the and in the Brooklyn side, the Williamsburg side. But what do you think the directors had in mind with all this stuff?
It's really hard to. I still have friends, and I know, like, a lot of people that get to know me now, they're like, oh wow, Frank, he's pretty cool. The thing is, like, I really felt like an outsider for a long time because I didn't fit in anywhere. I was a little too, like, I don't know, like neo-Hellenized, I guess, for the Hasidic communities. And yet I wasn't that guy that just fit into secular culture either. I was always kind of awkward. I was always, kind of struggling. Like, now my English is better, but I had to take speech therapy for years. I had, an accent. It was like, for a bit, it was like all Spanish and then all Yiddish and then like all English. And, and everybody's like, oh no, this language is more important than the other. And then, the reality of it is, like, not everybody's speaking that language out there. You might have, your Bubby and Zadie speak one language, and then everybody else that you see at school speaks something else. And then you factor in also that, like, most Jewish sects will, like, also push Hebrew to a certain extent, some more than others. So like when you're with misnagders, they're gonna, you know, not, you know, they'll kind of maybe snub their nose at, you know, if Yiddish is being spoken, but then you'll go with certain Chabadniks and like, oh, they're Argentine, so then it's all Spanish. So, you know, like that. And then also like some of the people that I still keep in contact with that also left, it's an ongoing thing. Like we're always just going to feel like we just don't belong. We're always going to feel like this outsider, and it's whether, and I mean, I've had experiences too. I'll go to a reform shul and, you know, oh, well, he wears a yarmulke and he's got tzitzis. So, you know what I mean? Like, and you're expecting like, oh no, they're going to be like really, you know, like really nice, and you know, you'll actually get like, you know, the rabbi taking you aside and be like, you know, maybe it's best you don't come, and it's like, look, I just got stuck for Shabbos here or something, or you know, whatever the case is. You know, I'm not coming here. I didn't show up to Frumsplain. You know, this was like the Jewish place. It was within walking distance, whatever it is. I promise I didn't come here to like, you know, I'm not a Chabad shliach. I'm not gonna, you know, be standing outside the shul trying to put tefillin on people on, you know, during the weekday or anything like that. You know, like that is not the case. But then, you know, like there's also the thing of employment. I mean, a lot of us, you know, like you don't really have a skill. You work in the family business, whether it's Chabad or, you know, Satmar, you're probably going to be doing something with, you know, working in some capacity with family. So when you decide, okay, I'm leaving this behind, you don't really have a lot of skills. And then, you know, like you're trying to like integrate, and, you know, like all the people at work are just kind of like, yeah, he's kind of weird. And it's like, it's not really my fault. I just, you know, I came from an insular community. You know, so a lot of us don't have, you know, a ton of earning power. And then, you know, to go to universities, you know, like that helps, but you're basically stuck in, you know, like a lot of, you know, like retail kind of jobs. And again, there's the cultural part where you're just kind of like, you're trying to be cool. You're trying to fit in with all the other, you know, kids who are now not Jewish. And before, everybody you knew was Jewish, you know, from sun to, you know, to moon. And, you know, like now you're like learning like a million different cultures. You know, you're thinking like, oh, American. And like, even that's got a lot behind it. Does that kind of answer the question, or were you looking for something else?
Can you explain your background a bit? I have.
So, yeah, we grew up in, I mean, I grew up mostly in Brooklyn. My father was a mashgiach for Kedem. So
I don't know what that is.
Kedem is, they make wine, and they've actually branched out. They bought a lot of other stuff. So
No, I don't know what mashgiach is.
Oh, it's, they're the person that makes sure the stuff's kosher, that protocol, you know, halachas followed. Basically like the guard to just, you know, make sure if it's like a bakery or something like that, they'll have to, if they have like a pas Yisrael, which is just like a higher standard for kashrut, they'll be the one that has to turn the, you know, like the oven on. And yeah, so it's basically like the guy that keeps, you know, make sure you know, the operation is kosher. Yeah, so he was a mashgiach for Kedem. So like on the surface we were Chabad, and yet I think our family, like, because we also have like, you know, Sephardic background, I've got a lot of, you know, like genetics from Morocco and such. So, I mean, I'm aware of that now. I found out about that now, you know, like family will say like, oh yeah, we're Jewish and, you know, we're this, and it doesn't really get much, you know, very specific, but it's like, okay, so we've got Mediterranean, you know, genetics, and, you know, so there was always the, you know, like Spanish, you know, Yiddish, you know, Hebrew, English, wherever it was, you know, so for a while, you know, I was living in Puerto Rico. Back then, this was in the 80s, there was kind of a Chabad house. It was like way deep in the mountains. You basically had to, you know, like drive to a certain point, and then you had to walk for about an hour, like through, it was kind of like that, for anybody that's been to Masada, that there's that the snake road to get back down. It's kind of like that, but jungle. And then the thing is, my dad was a mashgiach, so he was moved around. I mean, for a while they sent him to California, and he was, you know, making sure that the wine, they had a winery, well, a couple of wineries. And yeah, so I mean, I've also lived in California. It was in San Jose, and that was a Misnagder shul, so the Litvaks. So I've kind of, I think I've gotten a really healthy dose of like different flavors of Judaism. You know, hopefully that answers your question.
Jody.
So I have gone recently to these talks. One of my friends that I met, an academic, his name is Shneur Zalman Newfield, and he grew up in the heart of Chabad in Crown Heights and went to the Chabad, the main yeshiva. And at a certain point, he learned how to read English from his sister when he was 14. And they weren't taught English. At least not in that place, not the boys. Anyway, he went off the deep end and he became an academic and so on. But he just wrote a book, Degrees of Separation, and it's about people leaving Haredi Judaism. Not simply Orthodoxy, but Haredi types, this more ultra-Orthodox. And a couple points I just want to say, and then I'll shut up about it. He is a sociologist, and he.
Jody,
what's the name of the book?
No, his name.
Shneur Zalman Newfield.
Newfield, thank you.
He's at Brooklyn College or something. Really nice guy. Anyway, the book is called Degrees of Separation. And what he did, he interviewed as many ex-Haredi that he could find, and he got about 90 something of them, or 75, like a lot comparatively. And he found that most of them, you don't leave absolutely, there are degrees of separation, but actually most of them do not jump off buildings. Like he said, those are the ones we hear about. Something like 95% of them still have ties with their family. It's difficult, but they keep ties with their family. He said, the literary world wants exciting stories. And so they want the sort of really bad stuff. And also anyone who still has ties to their family is not gonna write a book to do a tell-all because you have a relationship with your family. You don't wanna embarrass them. So the things that we have that got published tend to be the bad stories where people really have real, difficult gaps. And, or it's really, icky stuff, abuse and things like that. And he said, in fact, some of the stories, some of the people that he's met who wrote these books were encouraged by their agents to make it even worse than it was because it will sell well. And I think that's true about a film. Because her story is much more believable. First of all, it's her story. She stays in New York. She goes to Sarah. She doesn't immediately get welcomed as a prodigy. She's learning decent English, so it's more believable. But I guess I just want to say that in terms of, for me, the issue of separating reality and film and reality and like fiction that's being promoted by a publisher, it's probably he's found that it's much less dire than it in reality, and that there's more connections that are remaining than what we think. It's not to say that there aren't really bad stories. It's just that that's not the norm.
Sorry.
Why was the role of the cousin, Moshe, so important in this story as someone who had left the community but was still welcomed back because he had connections on, I would say, both sides of the river? He knew both sides. Why did he schlep him to Germany?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Drama. The bad guy.
Had the gun.
The creep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think that the answer is a lot of this is that,
Talking.
you have the modalities of film. This film has to do certain things. You have to feel that the heroine is a misfit. You have to see her hair being shaved off. You have to have very scary scenes in which very real marital problems are handled in ways that are, they're meant to be very dramatic and make people feel very ill at ease with the way that it's done. You need to have the bad boy. I also think you need to have very strong women characters. A lot of the women characters, you may or may not like them, but they are very, very strong. And a lot of the men characters are not so strong, or they're not very in the Hasidic world. A lot of the men characters in the Hasidic world are very problematic. The husband does not strike me as being a very positive character. The cousin, even worse. Her father is portrayed, I think, realistically in terms of her own place in the story, as not being a powerful figure, and the women
He's
in
an
her
alcoholic. He's an outcast from the community because of his alcoholism.
well,
And
and also
They don't
apparently
address
also has lost some of his marbles.
Yes. A little. Okay.
So
My husband is like an insecure little boy.
yeah,
Yes.
He has to go to mama for everything.
Yeah.
yeah, sex toys.
Yeah.
no, but I think that that's also part of the motif of the film that I found very problematic and whatever it was, but this is part of what people are talking about.
And they talk about how young she was. How young was the young man? Was he much more than 19 himself?
So I don't know, but I'll tell you the scene that I thought was so powerful was when he tries to cut his.
Yes, at the end.
Oh my gosh, I thought that, whether it was really real that he would just turn, even though it was not sudden, he could see Moshe and how corrupt he was and all that stuff. But oh, I thought that was such a well done scene.
It was, but he was doing it for the wrong purpose.
Yeah.
He's the one who asked her for the divorce. He's the one who didn't empathize with her when she left the Seder. He's the one who didn't understand that when she left him alone, it was because she was not feeling well, and he didn't even come after her to see what was going on, what was the matter with her. She was like a prop on his arm, not a spouse. I thought that was a real problem.
I think the way he treated her when they were in bed and he became demanding and yelling was terrible.
Well, yeah.
I think there is a bit of your status in almost any Hasidic context, and I say specifically Hasidic because they'll be a little bit more accepting from what I've seen in like Misnagers and such, but it's almost like you're emasculated if you're not married and you're a certain age. There's going to be a lot of even strangers will just like, so Pesach, and it's just like I'm getting it from all sides here, but it'll be a lot more common. Misnagders, at least the ones in San Jose, they seemed a little bit closer from what I've seen from Modern Orthodox, where like there were a couple of guys that were just bachelors for years, and they there wasn't all this pressure of like, so new, when are you gonna get married? And I mean it's interesting from a gender, like looking at the gender roles, like the movie was authentically Satmar in that regard. I was aware that I wasn't, Chabadniks, would have been a totally different show. And in fact, even on Twitter, people were, there's like from Twitter, if you want to use that hashtag to find, a lot of Jewish stuff on Twitter, people were commenting about like, why is it that so many of these shows on like Netflix and Hulu and such they're like showcasing people getting away from Judaism. So, like I kind of came up with like, yeah, we'll see it, winter 2023, Unbound, the story of a Chabad shliach that stops putting tefillin on people. But there really is there is that they do want to like really showcase like some of the stuff that is like drama worthy, because like a lot of the the mundane stuff is not going to get, if they made Tzivos Hashem, the documentary of like kids and Chabad's little thing for kids, like people wouldn't be tuning in to Netflix to see Yankee going it's not going to sell. People aren't going to subscribe. But as far as like the status, like you basically, if you're unmarried and you're of age, like there is a loss of status, whether you're male or female. And and then as it goes on too, because I've seen that with certain people, as it goes on, like the attacks almost become like a little bit more cutting. It just amplifies, and it's I think a lot of times they I don't know. It's almost like I took an advising class at UW this semester, and I think that would actually help, like a shadchan to, to actually make some of these matches just a little bit more. I think they'd have more success in getting, like a lot of the people that just don't marry for whatever reason, or they'll go on a million shidduchim and they just never, they're like, well, I don't know. Yeah, so advisor training for the shadchan.
It's a good idea. I actually like telling a story from one of the trips that I've done about the Lubavitch, and I think it is here as well. The kids who are doing the miftza'im, they know how to have people put on tefillin, but I had students who were not Jews. I said, tell me why it's important. Tell me why the Rebbe selected this. I had a hard time explaining beyond the very simple level, this is what we're sent out to do. And I think that's part of the problem with the advising. And I don't know that this was authentic in the film in terms of the shadchan and the women who were trying to advise the Esti character. But it is an issue, I think, that they have. In terms of going into depth and behind the scenes, as you said, the advising class.
But the Kala advisor was very realistic, Seth.
The
What?
The Kala advisor.
Yeah, I'm saying that they
Very
had
realistic.
these things, and it's actually a very nice thing to do. I would love to hear from some of the people who are approaching this from outside a Jewish background. If you have any comments to say about anything so far. I know I have my friend Vilnoza who's on the talk, and Maeve. I don't know if you have anything to say.
I mean, I haven't watched the movie, and I just was like listening by the talk, but I see that lots of things are, no matter what religion we're from, I guess like similarities are so much. And I feel like even coming from Islamic background, so I feel like that's kind of very, very similar. So I'm a Muslim, and what Frank was talking probably would be similar to the Muslim people as well. So ladies and yeah, man and woman.
Okay.
I have to add, I've compared notes with when I've met Muslims over the years, and like it always felt a bit like it was, like a kindred spirit, because a lot of what they've, gone through, and walking away, I guess it's not really walking away, because like they still saw themselves as Muslim and devout, and like, they wouldn't eat pork and that kind of thing. So like they're still keeping, like religious practices, but it seemed very much, and I was like, like even growing up, I was just like, like we can't get along back home, but like, here, they're the only ones that seem to really understand all the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, there are lots of them, like I grew up in Uzbekistan, which is Central Asia, and we were, at that time, we had USSR, right? Russian people were there, and then our Arab people were in 7th century. So we kind of call them ourselves like Muslims, but do truly all people are Muslims in Uzbekistan, just telling that you don't eat pork, but if you do the things that you do, are you a Muslim, a true Muslim? I just feel that, even like going back when I was a child, I used to dream about going to Egypt and Saudi Arabia to kind of feel, see the people, because, I thought like all true Muslims are only in those countries. But when I went to Egypt, I basically saw lots of Christians and none of Muslims. And that was kind of interesting and eye-opening. And I thought that, I haven't read much to know about Egypt as well. So, but I think it's for us like to know that, I guess it's not even like you're Muslim, Christian, or somebody else, but just being a true person, like being a good person, that makes us good in our religious, beliefs, I guess.
There's a Jewish community in Uzbekistan. Were you familiar with them?
Yeah, we do have. Uzbekistan is pretty diverse country, and we do have lots of religious groups, and yeah, we do have lots of actually, and then lots of Koreans, and then people who do practice Judaism, and yeah, so it's lots of different people from different backgrounds.
Jody, I played for Dilnoza some tapes of Bukharan Jews. She had no idea what they were saying because the Bukharans speak more like Urdu and or Persian rather, and in Tashkent it's more like the Turkish language. So they have two communities that they actually have three. They have Russian speakers. They have in Tashkent they have the Turkish type, the Uzbek language speakers, and in Bukhara and Samarkand they have a language which is closer to Persian. Dilnoza, am I being authentic here? Correct?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
She was in one of my Hebrew classes, and I did a unit on it's an Israeli musical from ages ago, which was set in Bukhara, and I did some of the songs, and I played some of the people speaking, and Dilnoza had no idea what they were saying. So,
But we do actually have lots of people in Bukhara, Bukharians, and people who speak Hebrew. Yeah.
And Jerusalem has a Bukharan quarter.
Yeah.
Carol, did you want to say something?
I actually wanted to say something about the character who I think needs perhaps the most conversation is Esti's mother, who abandons her and really is the person who says, I can't be part of this community. And so when you see her next, there's the moment of Esti running to her mother and having to make sense of her mother's lesbian life at the one level, and at the second level, the mother has to, in some ways, of course, yes, be the person who makes the drama all happen with the gun. At the end, that's fine. But before that, you have to, if I'm recalling correctly, the degree that she can sort of be sympathetic to her son-in-law. And I say sort of because he comes to, I think it's him versus Moshe, who comes to find her as a custodian, really, the certified nurse, the CNA type, who is not doing much work in the convalescent care facility, but because that's all she can do, and she, whatever else happens, I think it's interesting to see that. I don't recall in Deborah Feldman's book if there was any description, if there was any absent parent that had anything to do with it. I think it was more Deborah Feldman talked about her own experience of having to break loose from the community that she was reared in versus the mother. And yes, perhaps the mother is there just for drama, but I think it all happens to an extent because of her. First, because of her absence, and then because of her presence. And that's all I have to say. I still vote for the music conservatory students who, did in fact say, hey, get real. You're not going to get into this school, but it won't kill us to be nice to you for these few days, whatever else happens. That's also interesting. And because Seth and I, we were both in Berlin just this past December, it was very interesting to see what was done. If I'm not mistaken, pretty much all the filming was done in Berlin, even the Brooklyn-ish stuff that they did some exterior shots, but pretty much everything that happened within Germany. Okay, and now I'm done. Going back to black.
Okay, anybody else? Ruth, do you want to say something? Unmute yourself if you do.
Hello everyone, I'm Ruth. This is my first time joining. I recently discovered that I was a Sephardic Jew, and I'm extremely happy to join this group. I'd like to share my impression of everything. I have not seen this film, and I'm eager to see it. What I perceive from this discussion as a psychologist is that there seems to be a lot of discussion about how this film is a point of departure from the norm. It seems like everyone has this view of this is the norm and this is how the film is different from how we see things generally. I see that both from, I'm also not a musician, so I apologize, and not familiar with music, but Rika started with, you know, it's not like this and it's not like that and it's not real, and, you know, and I know there's people who really are subject matter experts in that area. So I find this discussion to be extremely intriguing and interesting, and I hope to next time be better prepared to contribute. But I am definitely a student and an expert in human behavior, and found it very interesting how we expect the film to be very much aligned with our own personal experiences, whatever they may be. That's it.
Well, I'd like to see if anybody else has something to say. Kim, I know you wanted to be in this conversation. Are you still around? Are you able to add anything?
I have a question, Seth.
Okay.
For everybody generally. Why do you think it was depicted where the grandmother rejected her when she called her for help? I found that very disturbing. And I think there are a bunch of ways to look at that.
So this is Robbie. This is my first time here too, Robbie Marks. Hi. And so my husband and I have been talking about, again, another aspect of the movie, and we don't know if it's so, about rejection of people who are doing things outside the norm of the community. And it seemed like the grandmother, to me, seemed like the grandmother felt that since her granddaughter left, that she must shun her in some way. And Carol, if you're still there, okay, when you were talking about the mother abandoning her daughter, in the last episode, it turns out that the mother did not abandon the daughter. The mother abandoned the husband, her husband, who was the alcoholic, and she took the baby with her, and then the community came and took the baby away from her.
Right.
So we're trying to figure out, you know, does the community really follow you and try to bring everybody back? And I think the question before, why was Moshe accepted back in? And so that was somewhat of a puzzle to me through all the episodes, how much effort is made to bring people back if people want to leave, including a baby.
Of course, they were not interested in accepting the mother back. I do not know whether she would have come back, but they did not want any part of her. And again, that was at least the way the film was done.
The film puts it, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And again, not knowing enough about the life of the Satmar community, it was that drama for the film, or is that how it is, and so forth?
Well, I think Jody is right. I'm going to quote her, but you can say I'm okay or not with this. This was done to sell Netflix in many ways. It had to speak to the audience. So in other words, they asked the question, Robbie, what do you and your husband think that you will find interesting to talk about? And that might have been a much more important question than whether or not this is totally accurate. Jody quoted a book by Schneer Zalman Neufeld, which I have not yet read, although I've heard about. And I read a book by Lynn Davidman, and I've read some articles as well. She also interviewed 60, 90, some enormous number. And I've read pieces. And as I said, there are the horror stories. And then there are the people that, you know, I meet in the modern Orthodox synagogue or in the Reform congregation who've had a very smooth sail away from Haredi. And the other way also happens. Netflix is not going to buy a film in which somebody who is very conflicted, has a terrible life, finds meaning in the Chabad synagogue or meaning as a new member of Satmar. But there are many, many such people, and Chabad congregations are filled with such people.
Yes,
And,
yes.
I also want to say there are plenty of really true awful stories about people losing custody. That happens.
Yeah, I said
that absolutely happens, and people getting their lives ruined by abuse and so on. I mean, it happens all over the place, not just among the Haredi.
And Bill Noza will say in Islamic countries, for example, a woman who abandons her family might very, very well lose her children or never have any contact between the children and their father. And again, this is unfortunately much too common in the Islamic world. I'd love to hear from somebody who's not yet spoken at all this evening, Vicky or Kim or Barbara or Maeve.
Hey, so one thing that I found especially interesting was how much animosity there was from the Jewish community towards her moving to Berlin specifically. And I wonder maybe how the storyline would have changed if her path had taken her to a different place. So that was the first thing that I found interesting. The other thing that I thought was really fascinating was how the community was able to take away Esty from her mother, and she lost her in the courts. And I thought that was kind of interesting, the sort of power the community had over whether or not Esty could stay with her mother. So those were two things that sort of stuck out to me over the course of the series.
Vicky, you want to say something?
I do. I'm sitting here thinking that this is kind of so interesting for me because there's an aspect of me not knowing anything about the Hasidic community and certainly not anything about the way it was depicted. And as far as it's true or it's false or it's valid or it's not, I find that this conversation tonight was amazing and very instructive for me, because I think that after I watched the show, and I did watch all the episodes, and I'm an avid film goer, but I will say that a lot of times I do have this willing suspension of disbelief, and that in a way I look at some of what was presented as a disservice maybe to some of these communities, because for me, a lot of this was very real. I took a lot of it as being truth, even with that, voice in me that says, well, maybe it was extreme, or maybe this didn't really, but there is that influence that it has, that film is very powerful, and it concerns me that a lot of people like me or non-Jews would look at this movie as being, absolute truth and not be able to see any perspective that was balanced. So that was my reaction. I just, I loved having this discussion tonight because I learned from it what I can accept of this movie now and what I will question more than I would have before. So thank you.
Anybody else want to offer some thoughts? I would like you to have a brief conversation with me about what we'll do next. But I'd like, if anybody has something to say, I'd like to have a couple more final comments people might have.
I did want to add, I had an uncle that I posted a picture of myself. I was really proud that I changed my own oil in the car. And, he used that as an excuse, it's like, oh, you're dead to us and all that, this is so terrible. Apparently only, non-Jews can change oil. So like some of it is true. I'm pretty sure he'll eventually start, texting me and such. And, there are a lot of people that I would have thought, in the Hasidic side that wouldn't have phones and all that, they actually do have phones. So, that I don't know, years ago I would have thought oh yeah, he's never going to have a phone. And then sure enough, notorious furious texter that can text faster than me. Yes, some of the stuff is, it's, I mean, like legitimate. I mean, like there always will be, but like the majority of people are not gonna do, you know, there are people that like I can call up, hey, you know, oh hey, how are you doing? And it's not like, oh, you've been shunned, or you know, we'll never talk to you kind of stuff. You know, that being said, like I really do like the gender dynamics. I thought in the movie overall was just like really that part was legit Satmar. It did seem Satmar. I could kind of differentiate it from how other sects would have you know, would have acted, and you know, like handles a certain situation. I mean, like even I do want to give props to the scene where the Moshe and I forgot the other guy, that they put on the baseball caps. Like that's, you know, I mean, like I know like mashkichim that are like, oh no, look, I'm not gonna look Jewish like this, and it's like, well, A, you still have the Yiddish accent. I could tell like you just started learning English a couple years ago, and yeah, like I can see your payas like on the side awkwardly, you know, kind of like, and you know, like they tried to hide them. But like that's, you know, I'm glad that made it in there, because like everybody, I mean, if you came from that you know, like those movements, there's, you know, there's been so many people that like really tried to blend in, and it's just like so awkward, and you know, like it was great to see that in, you know, on the big screen, you know, because like you kind of want to share it with other people, of just like, yeah, that one time that you know, Chesky was, yeah, you know, like trying to hide, oh no, look, like I look, you know, I look like a goy, like no, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say Jane would have been my first choice, right? So.
And I just want to say the Chabad is, you know, everything I can say, they're really, really good about nurturing you, helping you with your Judaism, helping you with the Torah. They're good.
I like the theological approach that Chabad takes, and that's like honestly like, I mean, like Lori knows, like sometimes I'm like, well, don't say I'm Chabad, you know. I mean, I am, but like I'm actually writing a story. It's called Mitzvahs Batted In. I kind of equate it to baseball, that you know, like a lot of these new coaches in baseball will try to use like analytics, and like that's kind of what drives the team. And you know, like the way Chabad goes about it, they just, you know, like they're just trying to get mitzvahs. They're, you know, they'll tell you, we don't know when Mashiach is going to come, what mitzvah is going to specifically bring it. So, you know, they could be the friest person ever, and like they're just, you know, like they're eating a bacon sandwich or something, and like you'll still try to, you know, it's like, well, do you want to say a bracha on this peach? You know, something like that. Like they're literally just, you know, like an RBI, they're just trying to, you know, they get like the mitzvahs batted in. They really want to just get, you know, like even if they get like 3 more mitzvahs, they're like, oh wow, we got 3 more mitzvahs, and they'll, you know, here, let's all get drunk on this, you know, because it was such a great thing that we got 3 mitzvahs, you know, like let's party. You know, like from the Satmar side, and I don't want to like totalize this. Like, you know, again, Lori knows the story of the Satmar. They were like, well, Chabad, they're modern Orthodox, they're not really Hasidic. But you know, I've also seen many that just take the other approach. They're just like, well, you know, yeah, they're fried, better to just leave it alone. Like, why should you even try to get them to light candles? And you know, and I mean, even forget there was I don't want to call it a feud, but there was it Rav Shach that the Lubavitcher Rebbe went back and forth with, and there's even I you know, was looking at this the other day. There's a whole website out there that's like, I think they call it like Chabad-mafia.com, or like basically it's coming from a very Litvak, you know, very Litvak persuasion. I mean, like on their Facebook page, they're like, oh, Chabad's not even Jewish. Like they're, you know, it's like, oh, okay, well, what are they, Zoroastrians? You know, I mean, I don't know what to call it. Oh, okay, yeah, obviously they're Protestant Christian. Like, okay, you know, thanks for schooling.
I will make a shout out to one of our colleagues who actually wrote a very interesting and important book about not so much Chabad in general, but some of the ways in which the Lubavitcher Rebbe was presented as something which he thought put them outside the framework of Orthodox Judaism. So there is a book, and I'll send you the reference at some point. I may even have it. Certainly I have articles someplace in my computer and so on that topic. I'd like to discuss next week. I don't know if anybody has some ideas, but I have basically wanted to get some input from this group. If you want to continue with us, I want to do Fauda, but I want to give us time. That's 3 seasons of, I think, 12 or 15 each. One of the films that I very much want to see and talk about is Sandstorm, which is about a Bedouin film. Jody, have you seen it?
Sandstorm, maybe not, but for me, it's definitely easier to see one film than a whole series. So even if you end up doing Fauda, if you can say, look at such and such episodes, that would be really helpful.
That would be a good thing to do also. So I will try to binge watch all of Fauda, but I'm going to put that off for a few weeks. I put down a couple of series that Frank has recommended, but they're series, and I think that we need to have a single film. I want to see if any of you have films that you are dying to discuss in this framework.
Since nobody's jumping in, I could actually narrow down like certain series like Kipat Barzel to key episodes that like not necessarily, because the first season, at least the American one, is 11 episodes. Like you really don't need to watch that much to, you could get like 4 or 5 episodes and which would be closer to the length of a movie. And because a lot of it's just like Netflix. Like they'll have like these stories like on Aaron Hernandez or whatever, and like what could have been 2 episodes, like no, they dragged it on for 6. And a lot of it is just fluff. I'm not trying to like totally disparage Israeli film, but like they are taking some cues from American or Hollywood movies and such, and just kind of like dragging on what could be like certain key points that would like be a little bit more focused on bigger issues.
Anybody else have any films they want to recommend?
Just looking.
I have one. Harmonia. It's really beautiful. I'm not sure how you would get access to it, but it's a modern day version of the competition between Sarah and Hagar and their sons, Abraham and Ishmael. Have you seen that, Seth?
I haven't seen it, but I've seen a description of it.
So I don't know if it's, when I showed it to a group. So it's, people may be more familiar with it because it's biblical, but it's also set in Jerusalem. And it's incredibly beautiful music also.
I saw a film like a year ago on DVD I got from the library. It's called Sarah's Key. It was based on a book, and it was a really amazing movie. And this little girl, one of the stars of the film, and the daughter in the film, her father was the director of the film. So when I watched the making of it, like he was showing how he coached her to be able to do the film, and she was just like amazing actress for a little girl, and the whole film was really wonderful. So I watched. It was very sad, but it was very, very well made. A Holocaust film, a very good one.
Anybody else have films you want to recommend that we consider?
Well, I'd like to see Waltz with Bashir. Is that the name of it? The last time, I think you and Frank were talking about a movie called October or something like that.
Maktub, yes. We have suggested we should see. Maktub is a fun film. Carol, are you still with us? Do you think Maktub would be fun for this group? Jody thinks so. Have you seen Maktub?
We actually saw it just a couple nights ago.
No, but I need to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will send out an announcement. I actually think Maktub would be a lot of fun and very short and upbeat. And I'll ask for people to weigh in on some of these. I'll look.
Or how about the Women's Balcony?
Women's Balcony.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Women's Balcony would be a good film as well.
I second that one for the Women's Balcony.
I saw that.
Okay, very good. So I think it's past 9:30. Anybody have any final comments? I hope you'll all be able to join us next. I will send out an announcement to everybody who is here. I think I have everyone now. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay,
Thanks, Seth.
so,
Thank you, Seth.
so tentatively we'll see Maktub, and I'll send a list of some of the others that we can talk about. How's that sound?
Great.
Okay, Maktub is on Netflix and other places as well. Okay, Denosa, thanks for the thumbs up.
You're welcome.
Dave, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Everybody.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.